devil, a presence that takes many forms across different cultures, religions, and stories. From the subtle tempter to the ruthless antagonist, the devil has fascinated and terrified us for centuries by tapping into our deepest fears and desires. Perhaps the best way to describe the devil would be to say he is the adversary of God, or the personification of sin. From religious texts to literature and art, this figure embodies the concept of ultimate evil. In Christianity, the devil is portrayed as Lucifer, the fallen angel who defied God. In Islam, Iblis is a jinn who refuses to bow to Adam, symbolizing arrogance and disobedience. This rebellion is a central theme, representing pride, ambition, and the consequences of straying from the path of righteousness. The devil takes on different forms in other cultures but serves a similar purpose. In Zoroastrianism, Angra Mainyu represents chaos and destruction. Hindu mythology speaks of the Asuras, beings who oppose the Devas or gods. Each of these figures reflects a universal theme: the struggle between good and evil, order and chaos. These variations reveal the universal nature of the devil archetype. Every culture wrestles with the same fundamental questions. Why do we do evil? How can we overcome our darker impulses? While some of us strive to live with integrity, there are those who cannot resist the allure of darkness. They succumb to their desires, impulses, and ultimately to evil. It's easy to judge those who stray, but far more challenging to truly understand them. By examining existing cultural narratives, we gain a deeper understanding of the human psyche. Consider the figure of Satan in John Milton's Paradise Lost. Though he is the antagonist, his character is complex, sometimes even sympathetic. His famous declaration, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven," captures the essence of rebellion and pride. Yet it also reveals the loneliness and despair that often accompany defiance. Joseph Campbell, in his work on mythology, describes the devil as an archetype, a universal, inherited pattern of behavior or symbol that resonates across cultures. This resonance stems from its numinous nature, a quality that captivates and stirs our emotions. However, aligning oneself too closely with these archetypes can lead to psychological imbalance, often resulting in ego inflation. This occurs when one's sense of identity becomes disproportionately amplified, fostering delusions of grandeur, megalomania, and ultimately self-destruction. Archetypes operate on a primal level, tied more to instinct than ethical or moral concerns. The role of the human ego is to temper these archetypal forces with a sense of moral responsibility. This task is crucial, not only for our internal balance, but also for maintaining harmony in the external world. Carl Jung highlighted this challenge, stating, "The images of the unconscious place a great responsibility upon a man. Failure to understand them, or a shirking of ethical responsibility, deprives him of his wholeness and imposes a painful fragmentariness on his life." In many cultural narratives, the archetype of temptation, which the devil identifies with, is central to the human experience. For instance, in Christian mythology, temptation is introduced at the dawn of time through the serpent in the Garden of Eden. The serpent entices Adam and Eve into eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which God had explicitly forbidden. The serpent's deceitful promise that they would gain divine wisdom contained a partial truth but obscured the consequences. This act of disobedience marked humanity's fall from grace. The sin of pride, encapsulated in the desire to become like God, became the origin of humanity's suffering and estrangement from paradise. A parallel myth exists in Greek mythology with the story of Prometheus, who defied the gods by stealing fire to benefit humanity. For his transgression, he was chained to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains, and every day an eagle came and ate part of his liver. Each night his liver would regrow, which meant he had to endure his punishment for eternity. These myths are not mere tales, but reflections of the universal human condition. Psychologically, they represent the development of self-awareness, often accompanied by guilt and the perception of wrongdoing. Humanity's journey from a state of innocence to self-consciousness mirrors the process of individuation, the integration of various aspects of the self into a unified whole. We are born into a state of integration, symbolized by the innocence of paradise. However, as we grow and develop self-awareness, we experience disintegration, a necessary step in the journey towards self-realization. This transition involves leaving behind the comfort of dependency and facing the trials of life. Without embracing these challenges, we cannot achieve reintegration or wholeness. The concept of the happy fault encapsulates this paradox. Without falling, we cannot rise. Disintegration, then, is not an end, but a prerequisite for growth and transformation. To fully understand the devil archetype, we must explore the distinct meanings of the names Lucifer and Satan. The name Lucifer, meaning light-bringer, originates from the Latin term for the morning star, the planet Venus, visible at dawn. In ancient Roman folklore, the morning star was personified as a male figure bearing a torch. This celestial body's behavior, shining brightly but briefly before the overpowering light of the sun, symbolized hubris and eventual humility. The first biblical reference to the morning star appears in the book of Isaiah. "How have you fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn? You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations." Though this passage originally referred to a tyrannical king of Babylon, it has been interpreted as an allegory for Satan's fall from grace. Pride, defined as an excessive love of self over others and God, is considered the root of this downfall. This same sin is echoed in humanity's fall from Eden, emphasizing pride's destructive potential. The apocalyptic book of Revelation provides a vivid account of Satan's rebellion. A celestial war erupts between angels led by the archangel Michael and the forces of the dragon, identified as the devil. Despite their efforts, the dragon and his followers are defeated and cast out of heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him. Notably, a significant portion of the angelic host sided with Satan, illustrating the allure of rebellion, even among divine beings. The sorrow of the devil, often depicted as the prince of darkness, is profound and eternal. Once a celestial being surrounded by the harmonious choir of angels, he now wanders in desolation. This fall from grace is not just a physical descent, but a spiritual and emotional exile, marked by an unending yearning for what was lost. Confusion arises from the dual use of the term morning star in the Bible. While the devil is associated with this title, Jesus is also referred to as the bright morning star. The distinction lies in their respective roles. The devil's light is a counterfeit, a deceptive imitation of the true light embodied by Christ. This dichotomy underscores the devil's nature as a deceiver, often masquerading as a bearer of enlightenment. Carl Jung identified the devil as the shadow, the repressed, unacknowledged aspects of ourselves that we fear to confront, such as anger, jealousy, or selfishness. In 1886, the writer Robert Louis Stevenson had a striking dream. A male character, pursued for a crime, swallowed a powder, whereupon his personality was instantaneously transformed. Stevenson found his dream so striking that it inspired him to write the now famous tale, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, a story significant for its highly astute psychological insight that man is not truly one, but truly two. In Stevenson's classic tale, Dr. Jekyll is a well-respected doctor who cares deeply about the admiration of others and strives to be a good human being. In his laboratory, he concocts a potion that, when ingested, transforms him into Mr. Hyde, a primitive, unruly, and destructive man. Reflecting on the nature of his transformation into Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll discovers a truth about the nature of the human being. I learned to recognize the thorough and primitive duality of man. I saw that of the two natures that contended in the field of my consciousness. Even if I could rightly be said to be either, it was only because I was radically both. Numerous thinkers throughout the ages have commented on the duality of man, on the idea that behind or underneath the mask we display to others exist antisocial and destructive traits, desires, and impulses. In the Republic, Plato wrote, "There is in every one of us, even those who seem to be the most moderate, a type of desire that is terrible, wild, and lawless." And thus, books like Thus Spoke Zarathustra by Nietzsche observed, "The fear of wild animals has been bred into the human being for the longest time, including the animal that he harbors within and fears." Zarathustra calls it the beast within. In the 18th century, German polymath Goethe, a well-respected man who was revered in the highest social circles of his day, claimed, "I have never heard of a crime I did not feel myself capable of committing." But it was the 20th century's Carl Jung who examined in the most detail the duality of man. Jung proposed that, at a young age, as we begin to develop a conscious ego and sense of self, two interdependent psychological systems begin to form: the persona and the shadow. In Stevenson's tale, Dr. Jekyll represents the persona, while Mr. Hyde represents the shadow, the beast within. By projecting this shadow outward, humanity externalizes its flaws, creating an enemy to battle. In this way, the devil becomes our personified shadow and a scapegoat for our collective and individual sins. In the Bible, sheep are considered loyal followers of the Son of God, metaphorically, a shepherd. Goats, on the other hand, are disobedient and difficult. Goats were used in rituals of atonement as the bearers of the sins of the nation, and were let free to supposedly carry the evil into the wilderness. This is where the term scapegoating comes from, a psychological process in which others are singled out and take unwarranted blame for something. People use others as a scapegoat to hide their own greatest defects. This projection often happens unconsciously because of repressed shadow traits: envy, anger, guilt, lust, etc. Carl Jung makes a profound observation. Christ, as the Redeemer, was crucified between two thieves. In their own way, these thieves were also redeemers of mankind. They were the scapegoats. In shadow projection, individuals are tied to others through hatred, often targeting marginalized groups. It's a fundamental truth that when we fail to recognize the negative aspects within, they appear as external forces working against us. Being falsely accused of something is painful, and such lies create wounds that can last for years. Therefore, when we do something unexpected, we often say, "I don't know what devil came over me." The devil becomes an easy scapegoat. In contrast, savior projection involves a connection to others through blind admiration. Leaders like Jesus of Christianity and Muhammad of Islam often develop godlike complexes as they promise to save people from hardship. These leaders become symbolic carriers of the unconscious thoughts of many. Historically, societies have used the concept of the devil to enforce moral behavior. The threat of eternal damnation served as a deterrent, guiding people toward what was deemed righteous. But this externalization of evil also reveals a deeper truth. The battle between good and evil is an internal struggle. Take, for example, the ancient Greek myth of the Gigantomachy. Giants, born from the anger of Gaia, the primordial goddess of the earth, rose against Zeus and the Olympian gods in a rebellion fueled by pride, ambition, and defiance. These beings, massive and powerful, sought to overthrow divine order and claim Olympus for themselves. But in the end, they faced defeat and punishment. Their rebellion was not just a battle of physical might. It mirrors the human experience of wrestling with ambition, hubris, and the consequences of defiance. Making a deal with the devil is a common theme in popular culture. Often, these deals occur at a crossroads, symbolizing a place between two worlds, the physical and the spiritual. The deal typically begins with a mortal seeking something worldly, such as youth, love, wealth, or power, in exchange for their soul. A typical example of this is in the German legend of Faust, based on the elusive figure of Johann Georg Faust, a German alchemist, astrologer, and magician. After the devil serves him with magic powers for a number of set years, the term of the contract ends, and the devil carries him off to hell. In Goethe's Faust, one of the greatest works of German literature, Faust is a scholar who becomes depressed because of the uselessness of human knowledge and turns to magic for discovering the ultimate truth. However, his attempts fail. Frustrated, he no longer wants to live. In his desperate moment, a dog appears, which transforms into the devil's servant, Mephistopheles. He tells Faust that he will become his servant on earth and show him the pleasures of life. At first, Faust refuses. Then, Mephistopheles makes a wager. If he should ever experience a moment of ultimate bliss on earth so that he would beg for that moment to continue, he would instantly die and serve the devil in hell. Faust, who believes he cannot lose this bet because he will never be satisfied and thus never experience the great moment, accepts the deal and a blood pact is made. Ultimately, Faust experiences a moment of bliss and dies. However, as Mephistopheles is about to claim his soul, Faust is saved by God's grace. Though he was never satisfied and dies before he could realize his vision of a kingdom of heaven on earth, Faust learns to find happiness in progress, not just accomplishment. He never gave in to lust or idleness, but was focused on justice, prosperity, love, and the improvement of the lives of his people. This constant striving ultimately saves his soul. These stories serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked desires and the seductive nature of power. In the face of evil, we often react by turning away from it, by rejecting it in others. It is a natural impulse to focus on the evil outside ourselves, to see it as something foreign. But in doing so, we forget a crucial truth. Evil is not an external force. It is a part of us all. It is present in our hearts, in our minds, and in our choices. The reality is that each of us has the potential for evil, and the only way to fight it is by confronting it directly. The true moral high ground is not in denying our own darkness, but in recognizing it and actively choosing not to embrace it. To do so, we must confront the inner devil, the part of us that longs for power, control, and selfish satisfaction. As the Austrian poet Rilke wrote in one of his letters, "If my devils are to leave me, I am afraid my angels will take flight as well." We cannot have one without the other. We have both an angel, representing conscience, and a devil, representing temptation. Our inner devils resemble our shadow, which retains contact with the lost depths of the soul, with life and vitality, and provides hints for self-realization. As the saying goes, a man that casts no shadow is the devil himself. When we choose to define ourselves solely by our good actions and reject the possibility of evil within, we create a dangerous blind spot. This denial only leads to projecting evil onto others. It takes control of us as an autonomous power, often clearly visible to others, if not to us. It is much easier to point the finger at someone else than to look within and examine our own flaws. But when we point a finger, we forget that 3 fingers point back at us. The devil archetype goes by many names: Satan, Lucifer, the great beast, Shaitan, Beelzebub, the prince of darkness, etc., a being that stands in opposition to God. While the devil is deeply wicked, he is also cunning and intelligent, a master trickster, which is what makes him so dangerous. The term devil comes from the Greek word diabolos, meaning the one who divides, from diabolane, meaning to tear apart. When a community forms, it represents brotherly love, as in the phrase, "Love thy neighbor as thyself." The devil, however, causes division and discord. This division can manifest in communities, families, or cultures. The phrase "divide and conquer" encapsulates this power, as does "united we stand, divided we fall." While it is important to acknowledge our own devil in order to achieve wholeness, it is likewise crucial to know that giving the shadow too much space in our lives allows destructive forces to take hold, influencing our thoughts and actions. When individuals reject their inner consciousness, they inadvertently create opportunities for the devil to take over. The devil often masquerades as an ally, offering temporary comfort and false promises. His voice whispers seductive lies: "Do what makes you happy, life is too short," or "Everyone else is doing it, so why shouldn't you?" These deceptions play to human vulnerabilities. The devil presents himself as a liberator, granting freedom from rules and moral constraints. He whispers that you are the god of yourself and should answer to no one, that you are the master of your own destiny. This ego inflation is the devil's greatest tool. It is only a matter of time before pride takes root. Pride, as the origin of all sin, blinds individuals to reality. It convinces them that their desires and visions are paramount, leading them to rebel against anyone who opposes them. Pride inevitably leads to a fall, for it distorts the truth and isolates individuals from the world around them. Before we sin, it often feels as though God is the accuser and the devil our defender. However, once we have sinned, the roles reverse. God becomes our defender, offering redemption, while the devil becomes the accuser, filling us with guilt and despair. Aristotle's concept of the golden mean illustrates this idea, the balance between deficiency and excess. When we lose this balance, we become susceptible to the devil's temptations. Temptation begins with deception. The devil promises what appears to be good but delivers harm. His goal is division, to create inner conflict and paralyze our ability to choose wisely. The devil's love for division is clearly evident in every part of society: race, sex, religion, politics, and economics. The rise of materialism and egocentric views, especially in the West, is a byproduct of the diabolism which alienates man from his true self. This downward spiral leads to despair. The devil now appears in modern forms such as virtual reality, which promises a utopian escape from the physical world, or artificial intelligence, which, while superior in knowledge, lacks empathy due to its lack of consciousness. These divisions occur not only in the external world, but internally as well, manifesting as a split personality. This is often evident in religious mythologies such as the Bible, which talks of a man who had been completely overtaken by dark forces. When Jesus encountered the possessed man, he asked, "What is your name?" The man responded, "My name is Legion, for we are many." A legion refers to thousands of battalions, symbolizing the overwhelming unconscious forces within him. This overpowering presence caused the man to lose his sense of identity, leading to a fragmented and chaotic mental state. In such states, people often seek substitutes for meaning, numbing themselves with fleeting pleasures or distractions. Over time, these behaviors can evolve into addictions. Addiction represents a state of hell on earth. It is a condition where one's will is completely overpowered by a particular vice. Consider the difference between someone who occasionally drinks and an alcoholic. The former retains the power to choose. The latter is trapped, unable to break free from the cycle of consumption. What begins as a minor indulgence grows into a force that dominates one's life. When a person reaches this state, their behavior becomes obsessive, their thoughts irrational. They ruminate on their failures and blame themselves, perpetuating the cycle of vice. The source of their perceived freedom becomes their prison. At this point, the devil reveals his true nature. The party is over, and now it is time to suffer the consequences. Despair takes hold, leading to isolation and alienation from loved ones. The individual loses everything of value, a sense of meaning, direction, and purpose. In most fairy tales, it is often the fool who unintentionally outsmarts the devil, thanks to a purity of heart that remains incorruptible and always in equilibrium. Similarly, when the devil identifies our weaknesses, we can use this knowledge to focus on personal growth by balancing it with our inner angels. Carl Jung wrote, "The devil describes the grotesque and sinister side of the unconscious, for we have never really come to grips with it, and consequently, it has remained in its original savage state." Jung observed that the darker side of humanity is undeniable, as evidenced by the atrocities of history, surpassing anything conceivable in earlier ages. This devil symbolizes the unchecked, autonomous forces of the psyche that break free from the harmony of the total self. By accepting evil and balancing it with God, modern man accepts the world and himself in the dangerous double nature that belongs to them both. Christ's incarnation aimed to transform Yahweh into a moral God of goodness. But this separation from his shadow, labeled as the devil, made the devil inevitable. Jung saw Satan as the personification of Christ's suppressed dark side, reflecting the inner conflict of humanity. This duality, Jung believed, was vital for growth. It allowed humans to grapple with freedom, morality, and self-realization. Without the devil's rebellion, humanity would remain mechanical, with no opportunity for consciousness or transcendence. If one looks closer into the Bible, they'll realize that the character of Satan is not as clear-cut as modern interpretations suggest. In the Old Testament, the term Satan appears 27 times, mostly in the book of Job. However, it isn't a name, but a title, the Satan, meaning the adversary. This figure tempers the soul. Here, Satan is not the enemy of God, but one of his divine agents, a member of God's court. His role is to test, to challenge, and to reveal the truth through hardship. He strips everything down to expose the truth. For example, in Job's story, Satan questions Job's faithfulness, arguing that his loyalty is merely a product of his prosperity. God permits Satan to strip Job of his wealth, health, and family, not as punishment, but as a way to test the depth of Job's faith. Through suffering, Job confronts the raw power of God and emerges with a deeper understanding. In the end, Job is no longer just reading about God or hearing about him. He experiences God in all his glory, and it's an overwhelming moment of realization. Job falls to the ground, kissing the dust and begging for forgiveness. He becomes the archetypal, faithful servant of God. This moment could never have happened without the work of Satan, without the adversary breaking Job's world apart to reveal the truth of who God truly is to him. This portrayal is a far cry from the Satan of the New Testament, who has evolved into a cosmic adversary. Here, Satan is the prince of darkness, the tempter, the deceiver, an independent force working against God's will with everything he's got. The tension between them is endless. This stark duality, God as absolute good and Satan as absolute evil, is a hallmark of Christian theology. But it raises a question. If God is all-powerful, how can an opposing force exist outside his control? The answer lies in how humanity interprets good and evil. In the Old Testament, we see a much more complex image of God. He's not just pure love, he's fire, brimstone, and jealousy too. God, in this sense, is more holistic, more integrated. Yes, he loves his people, but he also has a fierce, demanding side. He is a God of love, but also of wrath, justice, and vengeance. The New Testament simplifies this view, presenting God as pure love and assigning all negative traits to Satan. This dualistic view creates a clear division, but oversimplifies the complexity of existence. Life is not purely good or purely evil. It's a tapestry of both, intertwined in ways that are often hard to unravel. This evolution of Satan's role reflects humanity's shifting understanding of morality. Similarly, in Hinduism, Shiva, the destroyer, is not purely malevolent, but a force of transformation, clearing the way for renewal and growth. Understanding the devil as the adversary, not the enemy, invites us to rethink our relationship with hardship. Challenges are not punishments, but opportunities for growth. They test our resilience, refine our character, and deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world. In the end, the figure of Satan reminds us that life's struggles are not meaningless. They are an integral part of the human experience, shaping us into who we are meant to become. Rather than fearing the adversary, we can learn to embrace the lessons it brings, finding strength and meaning in the process. A clear image of this was captured during the death of Jesus. After his death, Christ had to journey to hell. Otherwise, the ascent to heaven would have been impossible. Christ first had to become his Antichrist, his underworldly brother. This symbolism resonates with our own spiritual journeys. Before we can ascend to self-awareness and spiritual awakening, we must first confront our inner darkness. This journey into darkness is a universal formula for transformation.